Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let me go ahead on and call our special call meeting for December 1 to order. And let me ask Ms. Owner to call the roll for attendance.
Yes, sir. Malinowski.
Here.
Dickerson.
Here.
McBride. Livingston.
Here.
Horatio. Walker. Kennedy. Maine.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Newton.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very
Miss
much.
Onley,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Allison. I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Chair, entertain a motion for adoption of the agenda.
So move, Mr. Chair.
It's moved
Second.
and properly second. Any change, deletions? There being none. We'll move to our first item on the agenda. And that is,
Well, you didn't call the roll to adopt the agenda, Mr. Chair.
thank you very much. Ms. Owens, please call the roll for the motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson.
Yes, sir. Malinowski.
Yes.
Dickerson.
Yes.
McBride. Horatio.
Yes.
Walker. Kennedy. Manning.
No.
Myers.
Myers, no.
Newton.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
That brings us to the first item on the agenda. Item 3, that is a zoning map amendment that's before us for second reading. And that is tax map that's numbered from your previous zoning committee meeting 20-035 MA, Tiffany Harris, M1 to HI, Longwood Road, tax map number R16102-02-200402P and 19P. And that's again second reading. You entertain a motion reference the second reading for that zoning item. The chair will so move. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Let's move in properly second. Now there's option for discussion for item 3 on your agenda. The motion that was
Mr.
carried.
Chair, I'd like to be recognized.
Ms. Myers, you recognize.
I'd like to ask if there is any updated information on this item.
Any what, Ms. Myers? Ms. Myers?
Well, there was discussion as to whether or not we had worked with the county attorney for other alternatives to rezoning the whole of this 200 acres to industrial property in the middle of a residential property.
Ms.
And someone was supposed to come back after discussing that with the county attorney.
Yeah, Ms. Myers, to my knowledge, I think there was a meeting that may have included, I think perhaps the attorney, Mr. Rubel, and Mr. Price, our zoning person. I'm gonna ask Mr. Rubel, you on the line?
Yes, sir.
Did that meeting did take place, correct?
Yes, sir. We had a call, and I think Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, Ray Jones is on the call, as well as Geonard Price. So yeah, we all discussed different alternatives, and I'll defer to any of those folks if they want to discuss it.
Mr. Price, I think I had a little follow-up with you. Can you go ahead on and talk about what the option was in terms of trying to move forward as far as making sure that if this property, remember last time discussed was if this property could be rezoned differently, or can we do a text amendment? And I think that was what that discussion was about. Can you just update us?
Yes, sir. I think what was discussed previously, or the concern was this property being zoned HI, and was there an alternative to allowing this use, or to make a text amendment which would allow the use in the current M1 zoning designation? And that is something that can be done, but I don't know if it would be done prior to a rezoning of the property. But that is, a text amendment is something that's available to council at their discretion.
I think one thing we talked about last time too. I'm sorry, Ms. Newton, I see your hand up. Well, let me let you go first, and then I'll come.
I think I still have the floor, sir.
I apologize, Ms. Myers. I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
No, sir. So, Mr. Price, with regard to the text amendment, can you please lay out the process for getting the text amendment done and distinguish that from the process of getting a rezoning done?
Okay, if there was a text amendment and it was the council wants to initiate a text amendment, we can proceed with taking it for first reading by the 15th of this month. And then there would be a second reading zoning, and the second reading can occur during the time of the zoning public hearing, which would be on the 23rd of February 2021. And the third reading would occur on the 2nd of March of 2021.
Or in the alternative, we could have done the text amendment in the same way that we have done this move for rezoning. Am I correct? It's 3 readings in a public hearing is my point.
Yes.
So to the extent that these questions came up a month ago, we could have done the same thing a month ago rather than rezoning all of this in the middle of this residential property, correct?
I believe that was an option available to council.
And available to the staff who moved to have this property rezoned, is that correct?
When you refer to staff, which staff are you referring to?
So the staff is saying that this is the best alternative because it's the fastest. Well, in fact, it's of equal timing as a text amendment is my point. Is that correct?
I guess that you could look at it that way. From a planning staff, we didn't feel the need to initiate a text amendment due to, one, it was in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and secondly, because of the previous rezoning that took place in the area. So we didn't see the need to initiate a text amendment.
Ms. Myers,
I'd just like to know, Mr.
For some clarification, Ms. Myers,
Livingston.
up with your question.
Okay, sir. I'm sorry.
Because I know that if I recall, I think, and Mr. Rubin, you are someone from you already maybe to speak to this in terms of when this item came up, when it was realized that M1 was not sufficient for this particular project. So I understand that wasn't known, not question whether it should not have been known, but it wasn't known at the onset. Can someone speak to that?
Yes, sir. I think it was at the end of October or early November. So we've been on a pretty tight timeline. Our understanding was that the text amendment required a longer public hearing period. And that was one of the reasons why we were advised to go with the rezoning instead.
What longer public hearing period?
Our understanding was the public hearing period was 30 days, not the normal, was it 15 days?
Yes.
Is that correct, Mr. Price?
That's correct. That's when we were initially looking at it. That's what we thought it will be required.
But that's not correct, is that right?
No, I'm looking at some of the language, just a matter of how you're looking at it. It is determined that it would not require the 30 days, but 15 would be acceptable.
So to the extent that we're having a special called meeting for second reading of this item tonight, we could very well have done the same thing for a text amendment. And Mr. Livingston, I'd like to note with some displeasure that when the first HI zoning was changed in this area, we specifically said at that time that we were making a narrow exception for Miwan, and that we were not going to use that narrow exception to convert the whole of that park to HI. And this has followed the same pattern that you know, the roads and all of those things have followed. Once we accede to the request of the staff on a narrow question, it then broadens itself out. This is literally the whole of that park now that will be HI. And I do find that completely objectionable given what the staff promised when I moved to get the HI zoning for the Miwan plant. And now the staff is using that to say, well, there's already HI there, so we might as well convert it all, when we specifically discussed that and said we would not do that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Newton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions, and I apologize if you've answered this before, but my understanding, what's been represented several times, is that this company does not want the space to actually be industrial, and that they've committed that when there's a lesser zoning available, that they would voluntarily move to that zoning. My question is, has that been officially memorialized in a binding agreement? And then I have one more question after that.
Mr. Livingston, I can answer that, or Mr. Jones. He's the one that negotiated the legal agreements.
Mr. Jones, you
I'm
want
glad to do
that?
that. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and other members of council. That language is in the contract, and it's very well set out that they will move back down to M1 when M1 is consistent with the use they have.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess my second question, so that I'm clear, is my understanding is that if you do a text amendment, that changes the zoning classification for every single business across Richland County that currently has that zoning, and that could potentially open up some things in some areas that we don't want to have. But that alternatively, an additional option that we have is that there's the creation of a more appropriate zoning district that could be implemented with our land development code this coming year. Is that impression correct? I'm sorry, there were two parts to that.
Yeah, you're correct, Ms. Newton. I'll try to address your question. You're correct. Unlike a rezoning of a parcel, a text amendment would apply to any zoning throughout the county that has, you know, that particular zoning and would allow those uses. So you're correct from that standpoint. We're also will be looking at, with our new land development code rewrite, to try to incorporate more uses within the light industrial zoning designation that we feel are more appropriate in the light industrial as opposed to being in the heavy industrial, to avoid cases like this.
And I understand that the new zoning code will be approved by council, but given the concerns of the residents in this area and the concerns of the business about this rezoning, is there anything additional and or different that we need to do to ensure that review and that classification comes to pass?
As far as with the code rewrite that's taking place, no, ma'am. One of the things that we have done as a staff is we will be working with Mr. Rubel and the Economic Development Department to look at the uses that they've envisioned for a number of the industrial parcels that the county has, and to ensure that those uses are included either in a light industrial designation or within a new zoning designation within the new land development code, again, to kind of address some of the concerns that have come forward from this particular request. But
thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Who was that? I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, but at this point, I think what we have, what you have before you is the rezoning. And I think Mr. Livingston pointed out a potential text amendment.
Right, but I guess I was just confirming that there's a process by which we can amend the code in a more specific way that's happening next year. And then based on the conversation from Mr. Jones, at that point, we have a binding agreement from the company that they would move back down to that lower classification. So that's an alternate route as well. That's all.
Yes.
And
Mr. Livingston?
go ahead, Ms. Myers.
Just with all due respect to what Ms. Newton has just said, that all presupposes, and I guess this will sound a bit cynical, but this is now my third rodeo with having been promised that we would not do something to citizens that I represent that we have now, in fact, affirmatively done. And I appreciate that there is this thing out there now another year, in the making, which is the adoption of the new code. We were meant to adopt that this year, and it's now into next year. And so I guess what I'm saying is this does not provide an answer to residents who live in an area that has now been rezoned in large part, almost in whole. Because I do believe, and this may be a cynical way of looking at it, I do believe that the next time this comes before this council, we will not be saying, oh, we can't use that to take now the Jushi plant into HI because there was an agreement that we would not do that, and it is not the desired use for this parcel. I do believe that what will happen is there'll be a statement that, well, it's consistent with the current use, and other parcels have been rezoned. So something other than a gentleman's agreement with the company who did not bring forward this and ask for this rezoning. This is definitely Richland County led. Something more resilient than that, in my opinion, needs to be done to provide assurance to the residences, to the folks who live around this area, that we will, not we can if we figure something out, but we will rezone this back down to a substantially lesser zoning as soon as it's reasonably practical. Not next year when the zoning code comes out, because what we're trying to do is spur economic development. And we can allow this company to do what they need to do and back this zoning down once we have sort of more time. So I'd like to see something a little bit more robust than saying that the company must now come back and ask for it. No, the county should affirmatively take on itself to do something. And I'd like to ask the staff what the options are for them to take responsibility for correcting this zoning at a later date rather than having the company come back, because this is not led by the company. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Price, can you respond to that? Because that was exactly where I was leading to for my next question. In terms of council's role, in terms of in control of making sure that this happens, that the rezoning happens.
Well, aside from, I believe, the agreement that you have with their company, Richland County, through either the county council, the county administrator, the planning commission, or the planning director, can initiate the rezoning of any parcel within Richland County. So the ability for us to take the proactive action of rezoning the property would still be available.
Okay, thank you.
Can we write that into the documents that Richland County will, at some date certain in the future, come back to rezone this property back down rather than leaving it to the company's, good pleasure?
And that's something I was getting at too, to include that, and also include the language we're resuming as soon as practically possible. Actually, I want to amend my motion to, if the second would take it, that it would say we will rezone the property as soon as practically possible. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, if you're, I guess a point of order maybe, if you're amending your own motion, should I second that amendment to your motion?
Yes, and or the second of the motion can do that. Yes, thank you. Mrs. Newton, who seconded my motion?
I think it was me.
Oh, thank you. So you accept the second gift. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask Ms. Zones to call for the roll on the motion as amended.
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
May I ask a question on this? Is this second reading?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to abstain until I see that language written into the document, and I'm abstaining on that.
Thank you. You may continue this.
okay. McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda, recommendation regarding stipulations for my place. Mr. Brown, can you lead us on that one? Or whomever you choose to.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. To the extent that I could speak to an action that the council asked to be taken, I believe you have in your packet the culmination of information that was shared by council, as well as at least members of council, as well as the sheriff's department, to address a concern about a public nuisance facility known as My Place. The council agreed to draft some probationary conditions to address the concerns related to My Place. And in the document that you have in your packet, it represents some information for council to consider to either amend in some way, to add, or to take away if necessary. But I believe it captures from the conversation that council had what it wanted to be included. I would note that since the last council meeting, there were 2 specific additions that were added to the language that was provided in the memo from the, I believe it came from Councilmember McBride and the Sheriff's Department. That particular language is the first line under the probationary conditions, where it talks about visible signage noting patron parking for My Place will be installed at the owner's expense. There was concern by members of council that it would be inappropriate to hold the business responsible for folks parking at other facilities, and that was beyond their control. So this was input to help the business communicate where parking would be appropriate. So that's why that's in there. Also, there was a question about what would happen if there was a concern between the sheriff's department finding a violation to have occurred and the business disagreeing with that violation. You will notice that in the document, there is language that gives for an appeals process through the Business Service Center Appeals Board that would address if there was a finding in dispute between the business and the sheriff's office. And with those 2 changes, everything else pretty much aligns with what was presented to the council before via, I believe, Councilmember McBride and the Sheriff's Department. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and see if there are any questions for any members on the call.
Any questions? And before we move to questions, we have not filled in the date of the agreement simply because we aren't aware of it. But well, most importantly, where is the time in which we said we will the probationary period will start?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. There was a request that was made by Councilmember McBride, I believe, and it is down toward the bottom of the agreement. And it says the probationary period will begin January 3rd, 2021, and shall extend for a period of 6 months. I believe that's consistent.
Okay, that's what I was looking. Thank you. You want to make sure. Yes, thank you. Ms. Mr. Maloney, you recognize in Ms. Newton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I read this agreement, but can Mr. Brown, you tell me what date that was sent to us so I can try to pull it up here to follow along with what you're reading, please?
Yes, sir. I believe
I think it's November 30th.
I believe the amended version with the 2 additions
Yeah.
was sent yesterday, but I believe the original document was sent at the last meeting.
Right.
No, it's the amended one I'm trying to find here.
Yes, sir. I believe it was sent, I can't tell you what time.
I think it was November 30th at 3:21 p.m.
All right, let me try and find it then.
If it pleased the body, Mr. Livingston, I could read it if that helps Mr. Malinowski.
No, because I had a couple questions I wanted to refer to it. So let me try and find November 30th. That was yesterday. Well, maybe the clerk could just send it to me again then, because I've got something that came in at 4:20 yesterday, Mr. Chair, but it
that could be it because I know I spoke to Mr. Brown prior to it.
it's just got the agenda on it. It doesn't
okay.
have all this detailed info.
I will send it to you now, Mr. Malinowski. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions while I being forward to Ms. Malinowski? I'm sorry, I do have Ms. Newton. Thank you, Ms. Newton.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Malinowski, I saw the amendment in the email that was labeled agenda, so you might have that there as well. I just had one question. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for the work that you've continued to do on this and incorporating those modifications based on questions that we raised. My question is a simple one. There is a place in the amendment that specifies the business hours that the business is allowed to be open. My understanding is that those hours are based on current regulations for COVID. And so I didn't know if there needed to be some language tweak that, if the legal hours for an establishment of that type changes, that they would be allowed to be open for whatever was legal for that type of establishment, so that this wouldn't have to come back before us if, tomorrow or January 4th, the state law changes regulations on that.
And Mr. Chair, if appropriate, as these stipulations were part of the original document, I could maybe ask Major Polis if those items, if that time was consistent with COVID-related restrictions or something else, and then if not, we certainly could amend the agreement to address that, what Ms. Newton just said.
Good evening. If I can, I would just say that we believe that most of the issues that stem from this location occur after 11:30. And we believe that by closing at 11:30, it should help keep the incidents of violence to a minimum. So our recommendation is that they close at 11 and the parking lot is cleared no later than 11:30, regardless of what the COVID stipulations are at this time.
For my information, what are the hours that an establishment of the type that you're saying this establishment has to be, which I think is a private club, what are the hours that is usually allowed to open? I'm trying to understand what we're curtailing.
I'm double checking right now on the actual operating hours. I know they can't open before 10 a.m. I think they have to, give me one moment to confirm the closing time, but I know they cannot open before 10 a.m.
Thank you. I'm more curious about the closing time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're waiting still for that answer.
It's 2 a.m. 2 a.m. on liquor.
Did you get that, Ms. Newton?
So if the restrictions are lifted, an establishment of this type would be able to be open until 2, but during the probationary period, the stipulation here is that it has to be closed by 11:30.
Yes, ma'am. Closed by 11 and the parking lot cleared by 11:30 p.m.
Wait, closed at 11:30 and the parking lot cleared simultaneously at the same time? Did I mishear?
No, ma'am. They would close at 11 p.m. and then their parking lot should be cleared by 11:30. We believe that would give the employees ample time to close the establishment and get to their cars safely.
Okay, thank you. And then, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, last question, just so I know, obviously we're proposing this. Have we also, and we've been in different conversations, but are these discussions that we've also had with them?
No, it was for council to come up with something to present to them. They want to respond to what we present, but it was council charged to just come up with something to present. So no,
Thank you.
This have not been discussed with them yet.
Thank you.
Are you through, Sydney?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Malinowski, then Mr. Tracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question will be, in this agreement where it says they will allow law enforcement to enter anytime they want to. Major Polis, I thought you could enter any business at any time anyway that you wanted to check something out. So
Yes, sir.
So I'm just wondering why that would needed to be in there.
Well, it's in there because our deputies who responded to calls were met with resistance by the management and the people at the door. So we felt it was very important to include this as a stipulation so there was no misunderstanding about what authority the Sheriff's Department had. And we just wanted to try to head that problem off at the pass, sir.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And my last question at this point would be, at the very bottom, and I don't know who would want to answer this, but it says that any violations of the probationary conditions may result in immediate closure by the sheriff and revocation of the business license. I thought previously we had that a business would be closed by the sheriff in conjunction with the administrator of Richland County. Is there any reason that this is being changed to make it only the sheriff?
Yes.
So
I'm
not sure if you want me or Administrator Brown to answer.
Go ahead, Major.
Okay. We believe that the safety and the security of the community is, if we get to the point where we have to actually close this business, it's going to be for a safety and security issue. So we wanted to make it as quick and efficient as possible.
Okay, and also where it says that if a violation occurs, that they may make an appeal to the Business Service Center Appeals Board, and that the board will hear the appeal and make some determination then as to whether or not to, I guess, uphold that closing. However, it seems to me we need to stipulate a specific time frame in there, and Mr. Brown and Major Polis, because they could be closed, and if there's no time frame, it could take the appeals board 2 months before they agree to set something up and hear it. And here's a business that's closed, and we don't know if it is closed justifiably or not. If they have a reason, they need to be heard. And so therefore, I'd like to see a time frame put in there that maybe the Business Service Center Appeals Board would hear this within 5 business days of the closure or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Brown, could you respond to that?
Yes, sir. So I'll respond to it in 2 ways. Mr. Malinowski, one, thank you for the suggested number of days. One of the reasons why that information is put the way that it is because if council wanted to put a time frame on it, they would have the opportunity. Number 2, just want to clarify, if I could, Mr. Chair, and if we'll allow Ms. Pam Davis with the Business Service Center to clarify whether or not there is any time stipulation already in place before we accept that 5 days for consideration, Mr. Malinowski.
That'd be great.
Ms. Davis?
I'm through, Mr. Chair. We're just waiting for Ms. Davis to respond.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Pam Davis, and the current ordinance, business license ordinance, allows a business license appeal hearing to be held by the board within 30 days. Now, keep in mind that for that period of time, a recommendation for intent to revoke would have been written, but that does not indicate that the business has been physically closed, and the business then would have to wait 30 days. So in the case that is written in the ordinance, there is 30 days for the appeals board, or as soon as reasonably possible. But again, that doesn't relate to a situation where the business has been physically closed and padlocked, where it cannot operate.
Mr. Malinowski, from what I'm hearing, sir, Mr. Chair, if I may continue.
Yeah.
It sounds like you mentioned that you would like something with 5 days, and it sounds like what Ms. Pam just said was within 30. So sounds like that would still be okay.
Well, within 30 or as soon as reasonably possible. That means they could wait 30, or they could even, I mean, yes, they could go sooner, but they could wait the full 30. They could even go beyond the 30 if it's not reasonably possible for them to do it in 30. I think we should have a definitive time in there, and not just for this particular situation, but all other situations that come about, because we are closing a business and we need to give that business the opportunity to put the facts out there. If they feel it's been wrong in closing, if the sheriff's correct in closing them, then they'll also hear that and they'll remain closed. But I think we need to do it as soon as we can. And I'd stick with my 5 business day recommendation, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just point of clarification.
Mr. Myers, you recognize for point of clarification.
Mr. Malinowski, is that a motion?
I would like to make that as a friendly amendment. I thought that the motion was, did we make a motion on all of these?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if the motion is already there for what's been proposed, that's.
I'm not sure.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the what's in front of us as far as the requirements for this business, and add in the very last paragraph that the appeals board must hear the case within 5 business days of the closing.
You've heard the motion, just second. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moving properly second.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Myers, you have the floor.
I had one more question. I'd just like to ask Ms. McBride if this in whole is acceptable for her and her constituents.
Ms. McBride, you care to respond? Is she still on the line? Ms. McBride, I don't see her.
I don't believe she's on the line.
I don't see her on the line here.
Oh, I thought I heard her earlier. I'm sorry, sir. And just one more point of clarification. So are we now delegating responsibility and authority to close a business to the staff, or removing that responsibility from the council?
I would say that's what we're saying for this probationary period, not in general, yes.
Thank you. In that connection, then, sir, in that connection, I would go back to Mr. Malinowski's first point and say, since we're delegating this responsibility and council may have, no involvement in it, I would say that it is then important to have the administrator involved in the first instance.
So is that you want to add that?
I would offer a friendly amendment that we revert to the sheriff's office closing, but at least with a call and consultation at whatever hour with the county administrator.
Mr. Malinowski, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Okay, so noted. Thank you, Ms. Myers. Mr. Ratio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question just kind of goes back to the closing hours question line. My question is around, at 11 o'clock, does the Sheriff's Department plan to physically be on the premises to ensure that the business is closing on time, and subsequently at 11:30 to check that the parking lot is cleared? Do we have plans in place for checking in on the business at these hours?
Yes, ma'am. We will be checking in on the business to ensure they are abiding by any stipulation this council passes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Then, Mrs. I'll ask you to call the roll for the motion as amended.
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson, McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Mr. Chair, is that Mr. Walker?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move to
Sure.
reconsider the previous item.
Motion for reconsideration.
Second.
Properly second. Mrs. Owen, can you call the roll for the motion for reconsideration?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
No.
Dickerson, McBride, Livingston,
No.
Horatio, Walker,
No.
Kennedy, Manning,
No.
Myers,
How about yes, just because I'm nervous that Ms. McBride might have questions later.
Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay. Anything else to come before the body? If not,
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adjourn.
I entertain a motion for adjournment. It's moved and properly second. Ms. Owen, can you call the roll for the motion for adjournment?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson, McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio, Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and meeting's adjourned. Well, let me carry the motion, so meeting's adjourned, I'm sorry, motion passed. Thank you.